Okay, great. So let's check in with how you guys are feeling in general. Whoever wants to go first.
I
That
felt
was
like
good.
a lot of information. I tried to reread it a little bit today. It was kind of hard without the chart. So I knew I had some questions regarding that, where it seems like the spleen and the stomach, that do they kind of overlap?
Yeah,
Because,
they'll overlap. Are you talking like the physical line?
well, like where you were talking, like somebody would be, if they have issues with anxiety versus they might be overeating. So I felt like one was in one section, one was in another, but I'm like, I know that some people, that's their coping mechanism.
Yep.
So how they're kind of related, I guess, or should they
Yeah.
be separated?
Yeah. So when we talk about the meridian lines, remember there's always going to be a yin line and a yang line.
Hmm.
So the questions can overlap each other because when we're kind of going through the elemental aspect of coaching, we're not really focused on like it has to be a physical line on the spleen. So like we can do elemental coaching without even touching the body
Okay.
because we're just listening to those key factor words and we're
Hmm.
just saying, oh, it might sound like you have some deficiencies in your spleen line because of this coping mechanism slash addiction.
Okay.
And so then if we go into body work, then that's going to be on my mind of like, I need to make sure I check in with the spleen line because she was already using language that indicates a blockage in that line.
Okay. That makes
So,
more sense.
yeah, so I wouldn't get too tied up in like spleen versus stomach, especially when you're giving homework.
Hmm.
That is more of an indicator when you're actually doing the body work and you're feeling the bumps in the line. Then that's when we have the key questions to ask.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a guidance. So like I noticed your stomach line was a little rocky. Is there, some boundaries being pressed?
Hmm.
And so it's just a generalized opening question. I think, does that help?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and they're questions that come from the body work that we would ask.
Right. So I always tell clients that, especially like my clients who aren't in Cincinnati, the whole point of this training is more of the elemental aspect because that's what makes our body work valuable. Because they can go get a massage anywhere they want, and then they're going to push the repeat button and just get a monthly massage. The reason that people book with me and book 7 weeks in a row, or they get on a 6-month maintenance package or whatever, it's because we're providing that elemental coaching support. And so they don't even need the body work to continue their awareness quest, their curiosity, their reset of what's going on in their system. I always say the body work is the doorway into opening people's minds to the conversation that we're having, especially when it comes to male individuals. Like a lot of them come in and they're just like, they answer no to all the questions. Like, do you have any trauma? Are you experiencing any emotions that are dysregulating? Whatever the whole intake question, it's like, no, 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 no. And then they get on the mat and I'm just like, hey, I'm noticing there's a little bit of a blockage in your heart protector meridian line. Are you interested in hearing a couple awareness questions for that? And they kind of roll their eyes and they're like, whatever, sure. And then I go, is there some emotional stressors in your life right now? Is there something heavy on your heart? Are you overly protective of a loved one? Or, are you creating boundaries that aren't there? And it opens the door to this beautiful conversation that people would never have. And so that is why, like, I'm geeking out over here. Like, this is why I love this type of Thai yoga because I have two different lineages. The first lineage is the Thai yoga elemental training. And then the second lineage is just body work. So if I would have done the body work portion of my like training courses in that order, I would never have continued this path. I would have been like, whatever. The reason that it was so intriguing was the elemental aspect of I don't even have to touch a body, but I already know where you're going to hurt. And this is also a great marketing tool for you guys, because if you ever do like vendor events or, you know, pop-ups or whatever, ask someone, just have a conversation with someone and then have them lay down on the table, and you know exactly where their trigger points are going to kill. And then they're going to be blown away and they're going to be like, oh my God, how did you know? Well, you just told me. So yeah, I hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of those things where you just have to keep learning. It's like when you're learning a new card game, you have to just play to keep learning.
Yes.
And that's how I feel about this. Like Brent was asking me because he heard some of it when he was walking through this last night. He's like, "Are you overwhelmed?" I was like, "No, I'm so eager to learn more because I'm so curious about all these things."
Yeah, and I will tell you, like, the reason that the star chart came about is because I was overwhelmed in my training. Like, this massive manual is elemental coaching-ish. Like, I don't think I've even read all of it, because it just got so overwhelming that I had to create my own system to understand what the heck was going on in my life. And honestly, like, what they were trying to teach us, because you can't see this in a linear aspect. You have to be able to see it in the loop, which might be a great way to start. I can explain how the chart works a little bit, because I know, Melissa, you're going to pick yours up tomorrow. And then over the weekend, you guys can maybe look at it more in-depthly. Were there any more Earth questions?
No, I feel like I have like a little bit of like just curiosity more around the like the yin and the yang side of everything, but I think I'll just figure that out as we go. And if I have
Yeah.
a question.
And we'll loop back around too. We've got, our schedule is each day has an element, and then we have a recap day, and we've got in fluffer time. So, okay, let me pull this chart up quick. Okay. So you're going to see two different sets of arrows on this chart. You're going to see the support cycle that goes around clockwise, and then you're going to see the control cycle that goes through the center of the chart. And so the earth element, the first chakra, the arrow goes from earth to water. So first chakra controls second chakra. Second chakra controls third, fourth, fifth. So it's called the control cycle. And then you have the support cycle that goes around the outside of it. So earth is going to support the air is the water, and so on and so forth around the whole chart. And now I'm going to tell you how that kind of interacts a little bit. Let me get this alone. Okay, so let's just say you have too much earth over here. Imagine the banks of your river are so high that you can't even get close to the water below. Okay, that's too much earth. So it over controls your water element, and it can put a dam in your water, or it can have you so high up you can't even like put a fishing rod in it, if that makes sense. So then if we are deficient in this, I'm trying to figure out where to put your guys' faces. If we're deficient in the earth element, you can think of the earth, not your riverbanks, being too shallow. So your water is going to overflow. So if someone is excessive and they have too much earth, it's going to be over controlled in the water. So more than likely, clients are going to end up having a deficiency in their water, because that earth is controlling it too much, and vice versa. If there's a deficiency in earth, then they're more than likely going to be excess in water. And that will go through the whole chart. And as we go through each element, it's going to make more and more sense how you interpret the imbalances. But since we're kind of here just a little bit, if we look at the excess of the water element, there's poor boundaries here, which, if you remember from yesterday, was an issue in the earth element. So if someone has fear or anxiety, there's usually a fear of people not liking them potentially. So then their boundaries are going to be low. So deficiency in earth creates too much water. And so then people will mask. They will show up to different events and have really poor boundaries, or have or kind of like sensually addicted. So they get off with people's energy. So the more they're able to connect with someone, the better they feel. But at the end of the day, like when they go home and they're no longer in that energetic environment, they're probably going to feel like crap, because they just gave themselves poor boundaries, whether it was actually a physical act of connectedness or an emotional act of connectedness. And then if your activity over here is excessive, so like if this was, say our root chakra was balanced and they felt really secure and nothing was bothering them, but for some reason, there's a little bit of excessiveness going on still, then we would call this an insulting cycle. The water would be insulting the earth, and it would be flowing over. Even if they feel really secure, there's going to be one little thread of something that is kind of pulling at their security blanket. And this could be like a childhood wound. It could be work and not family. It doesn't have to be a lot. It could just be like one really small thing that is giving them comfort. So if we see like this addictive quality over here, maybe there's a small addiction that gives them security that they haven't told you about, but you're feeling it in their body. Like, hey, there's something with this water element. What's going on? And so it's just having conversation after conversation after conversation with clients to really start road mapping this. And like, I probably sound really confident in this, but I'm doing it for 6 years. You just kind of get used to hearing the different language. And that's why you guys are going to end up having like case studies, and you're going to have conversations with your friends and your families just to see what's going on. Okay. So before I kill your brain space with more conversation, I want to do the yoga routine that is really great for the water element. You can find this routine on the YouTube channel. It's called Delsarte movement. So it's a flowing activity, and it focuses in on where the meridian lines flow. And I can show you quickly where these lines flow before we go over.
I have a question before you start.
Yes.
Just to kind of backtrack, how do you know it's the water and the earth are balancing and not like air and water?
Yeah, so that question I might save for when we go through all the 5 of the elements.
Okay.
Let me flip the screen back and let me see if I can maybe clarify and give you a little bit of an answer, because I don't want to teach you the air element qualities right now to create confusion. But we never want to balance backwards. So if there's an imbalance, so say there's a deficiency over here in the earth element, we would never use the air to support it, because it's called an insulting cycle. Is that what the question was?
Yeah, so I guess I'm trying to figure out, how do you know that if it's earth that that you're out of balance in earth, that you need water?
Yep. So we would go, so it just depends again on the entire situation. So
Okay.
if we're looking at someone's imbalance, and I'll do the one that's like really easy. So someone is fearful or anxious about work. Okay. And they can't figure it out. They just have way too much anxiety. Life is overwhelming. So because it's a deficiency, we would focus in on bringing them earth element activities to bring them up. Now, when we have the whole chart figured out, and that's why this is kind of a hard question to answer, but because there's a deficiency here, we would actually bring support from the fire element above.
Okay.
So if someone is fearful or has anxiety, there's usually an issue with their self-confidence. And that's the balanced state of the fire element.
Okay.
So that's where, like, when we start getting this entire chart filled in, you'll start to understand, like, oh, if someone is deficient, we're going to work within that specific element. And then we're also going to bring in the support element from above.
Gotcha.
Because, and this is one of the most common imbalance that I've ever seen, is when people are in the air element. This is a childhood wound through and through. It's a codependency, overly helpful, people-pleasing aspect. If someone is people-pleasing, they are seeking security. They are seeking approval. They are seeking something that is going to make them feel really good in that moment. And so when a child doesn't receive any type of emotional connection, or their needs aren't being met, they figure out a different way to get their needs to be met. And normally that is this overly helpful, people-pleasing aspect. And it's a shortcut. It works in the short time, but in the long run, it just creates all of these different coping mechanisms that do not serve anybody, because it creates really poor boundaries then. And then we feel burned out. Casey, I see you like doing this. Are you hitting something?
Just like from the 2 days, I'm like, I'm completely out of whack.
Take
And I'm
this-
so excited for our session this weekend.
Yeah, like I remember, so I was in India for 30 days. And I remember showing up to day 1 of class going, what the F did I sign up for? Because I did not sign up to do Thai massage. I thought I was signing up for yoga, like 200-hour yoga training. And so I sat there the first day and I was like, this is complete horse crap. Like, I don't want to be here. And I am here for another 30 days. And then I showed up for class the second day, and we're going through the exact same patterning. And we did this water element. And then on day 3, we show up to the fire element. And I used to be a corrections officer. So like anger, frustration, like overconfidence, right? And all of a sudden we get that element and tears just start flowing down my face. And I'm just like, holy shit, I'm the most toxic person I've ever met. And that was like the moment that I was like, I can do this for a living. This is interesting. This is what people should be taught in school, because we would have such a better society. So then here we are 6 years later, because I deep dove and like trained all over the place. But yeah, it's really, really fascinating stuff once you like find the loops. And it gets to be more and more unique, because we get this really big imbalance right away. Like you're starting to see where you could improve in already. But what happens if you fix the big things? Then you're like pulling these tiny little threads of memory banks that you didn't even know about. Like I'm having different memories pop up that I'm like, well, damn. Now I got to go rebalance that, because that's been filtering this. So the rounds that we do get smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's why clients have been working with me for 5 years. It's not because I fixed them. It's because they're interested in diving deeper down the rabbit hole of their conditioning. So, okay. My throat needs a break, and let's do some yoga.
Sounds good.
All right. And then we'll come back and we'll dissect all of this. All right. Okay, so this is one of my absolute favorite routines to do for a class. You know how I said I like to do deer, pigeon, banana pose, and then this is usually following it at some point. And so we start standing, and you can be at the front of your mat or wherever you want to be, it doesn't really matter. But I want you to key into where my fingers are on my own body, and then you can check yours too. But if you don't have a mirror, it's kind of hard to see that. I guess you have a computer screen, so it works. Okay, so you're just gonna notice where your fingertips hit your legs. So mine hit right above this pocket that I have. And so as we do this technique, your hands should drop down, and take notice where your shoulders are at too. So I want you to close your eyes, and we're gonna do mountain pose. So gently bend the knees slightly. Palms can be forward or they can be touching your side, it doesn't matter. And just start to breathe up and down the spine. And if you want to rock a little forward and back into the toes, into the heels, feel free. And then eventually you'll kind of just find your way to a nice full flat bottom sole with the knee slightly bent. And kind of feel yourself surrounding into the floor. Seeing if you can feel that energy coming back up into the feet as you surrender down. Check in with your spine. Notice if your head is tilted up or down, right or left. And can you feel a pull either on your right shoulder or your left shoulder, or do you feel pretty balanced? We're just going to drop the chin to the chest. And we're going to take 5 to 10 breaths to roll vertebrae by vertebrae all the way down the spine. So as your chin hits your chest, you're just allowing the body to fall vertebrae by vertebrae. And don't move any body part until you get to that section of the body, and keep taking nice, deep, big breaths. And when you do finally get to the bottom, just allow yourself to little sway side to side. One of my favorite things is to tuck my hands underneath my feet and kind of wake them up by rocking forward and back on my feet. And then I'll untuck my hands and just allow myself to fold a little bit further. So you're gonna roll all the way back up, again, going extra slow, 5 to 7 breaths, vertebrae by vertebrae. And you're gonna notice that you wanna keep your hands heavy, your head heavy, your shoulders heavy, until you get to the exact moment that their spot needs to come into rotation. And just take note of like where the vertebrae, like which one might be a little extra sensitive, what part of the body, and maybe you take a couple extra breaths in those spots. And just remember, the head does not come up until the absolute last point. And when you stand at the top tall as can be. You just check in with yourself. You reground into the feet. You take notice of how that felt, because we are in the water element. We are flowing through the back body because that is where the bladder meridian rolls. And this is where the water element comes in with the Delsarte movements. So you're going to inhale the right elbow, and the lower portion of that arm is going to be very floppy. No movement, no like flexion or anything. And then you're going to exhale the forearm out to the side, and your wrist and fingers are still limp and loose. And then you're going to inhale the wrist into alignment. Fingers are still loose. And then very slowly reach those fingers all the way out. And as if you had an eye in the palm of your hand, you're just going to gently twist and look around. And you might even feel some of those meridians in the arms lighting up. That's part of our fire element and air element, because that's where our meridians for those lines are. But we're just looking around, and then we're going to come back to center. And just like you flip a light switch off, you're going to flip those body parts off. So you're going to let the fingers just flop. And then you're going to take a breath in, and as you exhale, that wrist just flops. And as you take an inhale, your elbow collapses. And as you exhale, you drop the arm down. And now I'm going to come closer to the screen so you can see. My hand is drastically longer. This is the side that I did it on. Drastically longer than this side. And it's because we relax the entire masculine side of the shoulder. And we want to relax that because when we pull up the chart, it's going to go down the bladder meridian line. So let's do the left side. We're going to inhale the left elbow up, and the forearm, wrist, fingers are limp. We're going to exhale the forearm out to the side. Inhale the wrist on, and reach those fingers up. Looking around with the palm of the hand. You might even notice a pull in the front of the chest. And we come back to center. And as we take a breath in, we exhale and let the fingers turn off. And then the wrist. And the elbow. And a big breath in. And we let it go. And so hopefully your right and left are aligned, and we're going to dip the chin and go back into a forward roll. 5 to 7 breaths to get you all the way to the bottom. And know that you can definitely take more than that. Like, I have done like a 10-minute like roll before, but for time purposes, 5 to 7. And when you hit the bottom of your forward fold, grab the elbows and just sway side to side. And then roll yourself back up, vertebrae by vertebrae. Keeping everything heavy, hands, head, shoulder. And arrive at the top of that stance and just notice how you feel. The water element is all about connecting into the emotional body. So when we give clients the opportunity to pause at the top of each roll, it allows them to feel into potential emotions that have been bubbling at the surface, waiting to arrive. So we're going to do that Delsarte movement with both arms this time, just for time. So you're going to inhale both elbows as the forearm, fingers, wrists are limp. Exhale the forearms out. And we will do this activity in person too, so I can make sure you're doing it really well. Turn on the wrists, fingers are loose. And then turn on the fingers and reach. You might need to take a little bit wider stance, but then you're going to just gently look around, just allowing. And then come back to center. Turn the fingers off, wrists off, collapse the elbows. Take a deep breath in. Exhale, throw it away. And then roll chin to chest all the way down, vertebrae by vertebrae. We are creating a wave within the body, a wave for clients to connect to themselves. And when you get to the bottom, you're more than welcome to really reach side to side or do one of the other movements that we already have done. And when you're ready, you can roll back up. Vertebrae by vertebrae all the way. And when you get at the top, just check in with yourself. So create a nice wide stance, and we're just gonna allow the hands to kind of flop around us. I call it the kidney hits. And so imagine yourself like a little kid, just free and doing whatever you want, just swaying side to side, getting enough momentum for those arms to kind of hit the kidneys in the back. And then we can slow it down. So that rolling motion is one of the most given homework that I give for the water element. We're going to hit a couple more postures, but you can meet me on the floor. So, because the bladder meridian runs the entire back body, the kidney meridian actually runs the inside of the leg. And then once it hits the reproductive, it dives deep into the body. So the kidney line only has a very shallow point, and that's okay. So we're gonna do a little self massage. So you're gonna do a figure 4. So you're gonna pull one leg in, one leg out. And we'll just reach for that right leg if that's the one that you have out, or whichever one you have out, doesn't matter. And I want you to just fall into it and just notice if you can get a little bit of a stretch through the actual physical kidney space. So you can turn the heart open and just reach out towards that foot. Again, you might not feel a huge stretch in the kidney, but you're actually opening up the physical kidney in the back of the body. And this is where you can utilize a lot of props. Like if you have a strap, you can always loop it around the foot and do one of these. I am a fan of all props, so it really doesn't matter. However, a client feels comfortable just opening up that side body into the kidney is all that matters. And then we're going to come back up. And so if you remember yesterday, the spleen meridian followed the shin. The kidney meridian is just below that line. So a great way to follow it is finding the arch of your foot, tracing it back to around the ankle joint, and then follow that little divot between the ankle joint and the Achilles tendon up the inside of the leg. This is going to be the kidney meridian. And so you should not be you should not feel the shin, but you should be 1 to 2 fingers away from the shin if you've been following that divot that follows right between the ankle and the Achilles tendon. And you just work your way up. Whew, wow, that's painful. And then you can work your way down too. If you were to be following this up into the top of the thigh, you would just keep wrapping it around and imagine the spleen line comes right off the edge of the kneecap, and the liver meridian, which we'll get into later, it's pretty much the seam of your pants. And so the kidney is right in between the seam of your pants and the top of that thigh where the spleen is. And again, don't get too worried about, am I on the right spot? Am I not? When we get in-person body work, you'll know where it's at. So this is just to get an idea on your own body, like what you're starting to feel. And then we'll just bring it to the other side. So whichever foot is out, throw it out to the side, reach the chest open, open that kidney space in the back. And just allow yourself to breathe. And then allow yourself to come back up. And again, follow the arch of the foot. And then around the back of the ankle joint and up the side of the shin. And just allow yourself to kind of palpate that and open that channel. The kidney meridian is part of our vital life force in Chinese medicine. So if the kidney line is feeling really tender or gummy, there's probably a legitimate life force kind of sucking the life out of people. So the burnout, pushing themselves too much, hormone imbalance. If they just had a child, the woman or the mother passes their chi on to the child. So if this meridian line is deficient during pregnancy, we want to get it up, because otherwise they're going to have really hard recovery for their birth, and their child is actually going to have a weak chi system, which then is like a constant thing that they have to take care of. And I'm not talking like autoimmune disease, but they just might end up with like a chronic fatigue issue because they didn't have enough chi passed on to them. This is why it's usually recommended to not have children back to back to back either, to have a nice gap between like 2 to 3 years, so that the mother can regain her chi to pass it on to the next one. So very fascinating. I know my Chinese medicine teacher that I was in Berlin with, she said that her brother is crazy strong and has no issues, but she was born second a year later, like right after, and she has to take care of herself immensely. Like she's the one that gets sick all the time. So. Okay, so then we can do butterfly. And again, because the bladder meridian is on the back of the body, I just give clients really easy postures. So butterfly is great because it stretches liver, but it can also stretch the kidney. And then if you have them fold forward, they're getting into the back of the body. And know that if you're doing a yin class, you can always use a bolster and let them kind of just drop their head onto that. And then it'll just gently roll up, and we'll just do a couple more postures. So you can do legs out in front fully. And I want you to notice the two different techniques. So if you tell someone to just fold forward, they're going to collapse in, and they're going to be focused more on hamstring stretching. And so if you have them sit up nice and tall, head up, chest up, and fold gently, they're going to get stuck because you're pulling the toes back. So have them pull their toes back. It's going to light up the calf. It's going to light up the hamstrings, and it's going to light up the low back. Head up, chest up, feet flexed, and then breathe into it. And with each and every exhale, you're going to fall just a little bit further, and a little bit further, and a little bit further. So I always recommend clients to do this first, 5 to 7 breaths. And then at the end of that, that's when I allow them to collapse into that pose. Because we want to activate the meridian line. Again, we're focused on activation. And then go ahead and fold forward all the way. We're just allowing ourselves to roll up. We're going to do a wide leg. And again, we're going to keep those feet flexed. And you can go out to one side. Again, opening up the heart, opening up the chest. And just breathe. Allow yourself to just open everything up. So depending on how tight the client is, they're either going to feel it in the bladder meridian, which runs down the back of the leg, or if they're not that flexible, they might be angled in a little bit more, and that's where they're going to be activating their kidney meridian, because that runs the inside of the thigh. Again, it's not right or wrong, it's just figuring out what your client can find into their body. Inhale, rolling up and just roll over to the other side. And we're always trying to do balancing postures with the water element, especially in a yin setting. We want to make sure that we do everything equal on both sides. And then rolling up to the top and then fold forward, keeping those feet flexed. By keeping the feet flexed, you're going to protect the client from overstretching because it'll be an SOS signal a little bit too hard to ignore. And then you're going to roll yourself up. Bring those legs together. Shake them out if you need to. And we're just going to move on to hands and knees. You can do cat-cow as a transition. Not only does it get the stomach and spleen, but now you're getting the bladder on the back of the body as you arch. Remember to allow the belly to drop and the head just follows. It's the chest that's coming through. And then go ahead and allow yourself to come into a down dog. Walk out the back of the heels because you're moving through that bladder meridian, back of the calf, back of the hamstring. Allow your client to bend the knees if need be. It's more important to get the shoulders to push through than it is to have straight legs. So always keep that in mind. And then you're just going to walk the feet to the top of your mat and hold in that forward fold. And then vertebrae by vertebrae, roll all the way up. All right, put you guys back up on a table. So the last part of water element postures is all about balance. So a yang version of the water element is balancing on one side of the body versus the nice continuous roll of postures that are the same. So you can do tree pose, so planting that left foot into the earth, pressing the toes in, really feeling the ground, and then moving the right leg up the side of the left leg. And again, it can be just at the ankle, it can be above the knee, doesn't really matter. Because as we do the balancing posture, we're activating the bladder meridian that runs down the back of the leg. So when hands come to center, we straighten the spine and connect with the bladder on the back of the body. Lift the head from the crown as you hold. And I'm just gonna roughly go through the other postures for balance, but I don't want to focus too much on our asanas because I don't think it's gonna be too relevant unless you're teaching private yoga with your Thai massage. So you have your tree pose, you have your eagle pose where you wrap this foot around and you sit back into it. And then you have the extended big toe pose where you're out to the side. Okay, there's so many more balancing postures. If you end up getting into yoga and you really want a focal point, just write balance postures in this grid space, and then you can just Google a bunch of them or use the recommended reading list for that. Let's do the other side. Right foot grounds into the floor. Left leg comes up wherever it feels comfortable for you. Hands to heart center. And allow yourself to just be in this space. And then come out of that whenever you're ready. You can do chair pose, because I did not show this one to you guys yesterday, but I'm going to show it now. Chair pose will activate the stomach meridian. Okay, so you have chair pose from yesterday's class. You can do hands in front, or you can go all the way up. If you go all the way up, you'll get a nice extension through the stomach for that. And then nice tall stance, breath all the way in. And then let's just dive all the way down. And just notice how you feel. Just kind of sway side to side. Connecting into the back of the body. And then go ahead, depending on where you're at on the mat, either walk the hands forward or walk the feet back for your down dog. Drop the knees to the floor and just sit back in that resting posture where we have where we're just in our posture that we would do the start and end of every class or every session. So I want you to just ground here. I want to get practice in this posture so when we get into the training, it doesn't start to fatigue you too much. Press the top of the feet into the earth. Relax the feet. Place one hand on heart center, one hand on either second chakra or maybe solar plexus for you. And the whole point of puja is a prayer. So we're just going to get started in that process. Allow yourself to imagine a golden light coming into the center of your body, whether it's coming through the top of the head or through the center of the body. Just imagine that light coming into the body. And with each and every exhale, that light gently grows a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger until it's no longer just inside of us, but it surrounds us on all sides, above, below, and all the way around. Allow yourself to feel that orb of protection. And give yourself permission to clear your energy. I release whatever stagnation, whatever blocks, whatever is in my energy field. I release it into that light, allowing me to be a conduit to receive and give. I call in my spirit guides, my ancestors, my spirit animal, and I call in the lineage of the Thai masters and my personal teachers, allowing me to be a conduit to give this beautiful practice today. So that is how we set ourselves up for puja at the beginning of our sessions. And at the end of the session, we do the exact same thing with the client. Imagine that golden light coming into the body. It is all around you and it has never left you. Whatever has come forward, allow the mind to receive it with clarity and openness. And we send gratitude to our guides, our spirit animals, and our ancestors. Allow yourself to stay in this Shavasana for a few moments, allowing yourself to receive any final messages. And just allow yourself to rest into the mat. So I encourage you to lay down on your mat just for 5 minutes. Hand to heart, hand to solar plexus or womb. And just allow yourself to continue to imagine that golden light all around you for just 5 minutes. Allow yourself to be in that space. And I'm going to play one of my favorite I release control and surrender to the flow of love that will heal me. I release control and surrender to the flow of love that will heal me. I release control and surrender to the flow of love that will heal me. I release control and surrender to the flow of love that will heal me. I release control and surrender to the flow of love that will heal me. I release control
and surrender to the flow of love that will heal me. I release control and surrender to the flow of love that will heal me. I release control and surrender to the flow of love that will heal me. I release control and surrender to the flow of love that will heal me. I release control and surrender to the flow of love that will heal me. I release control and surrender to the flow of love that will heal me. That will heal me. I release control and surrender to the love that will heal me. I release control and surrender to the love that will heal me. That will heal me. I release.
So allow yourself to move those fingers and toes and just come back into this space. We're going to take a 5-minute break. So if you need a little bit more time to just zone into that Shavasana, feel free. And I will meet you back at 8:10. So it's about 6 minutes. So feel free to take as much time as you need.